Well, David, there's a lot of words that get thrown around to describe what you and the A's front office have done with players recently: an overhaul, a transition, a regeneration. I'm just curious, what's the terminology you guys use officially to describe what is maybe still taking place?
Those are some of the more like generous and family friendly words that people are using. Look, this is a change for us. I think we've obviously seen some familiar faces leave in the past month, but there's a lot of opportunity here, and there's a lot of new exciting faces, and I think luckily for our fans, they've gotten to see that the first week of the season.
There's a personal and a professional side to what you're doing. And obviously you and Billy were part of building up a group that you kind of have to now take apart, deconstruct, and then rebuild again. What's the balance between this not being a lot of fun versus also knowing the Oakland A's are really good at doing this over the years?
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, yeah, look, this is a cycle we've been through a lot, unfortunately, and it's sort of been beaten to death to say like, hey, this is unfortunately our lot, our sort of the cycle we have to go through until things change when it comes to the ballpark. So that said, I think we find some energy, some enthusiasm comes from the process, but it's impossible to sort of shy away from the fact that it's a bummer to have those conversations. And I've talked about this for years. I remember going all the way back to Cespedes trade and some before that, like, you think about having to make that call, or in the case this year, having to bring Matt Olson into the office in spring training and tell him that when this guy has been such an important part from the day he was drafted coming up through the minor leagues of what we try and build here. So in that way, I totally, I empathize with the fans because I've got a 12 and 9-year-old fan living in my house that I have to explain this to as well. So when I tell them that, I'm tomorrow morning, I'm going to tell Matt Olson he was traded, I get it from them plenty.
Dad, come on.
Exactly.
You should take credit for this. I know you won't. You'll pass the buck. But why is your franchise so good at finding the next wave of talent? What do they see something? Do they know something specific? What is it?
I think we have really good processes in place. I think we have, a lot of people who've been here a long time and been through it. And you look at whether that's in player development with Keith Littman and Grady Fuson and now Ed Sprague running the farm, or Eric Kubota and his scouting staff, all the way up to our front office staff. Like, I think we have people who understand, like I said, this is where we're headed. They've been through it before. They see it as a challenge. And the process has been really good.
So I've noticed that every player that was dealt before spring training, during spring training, they went to a competitive team elsewhere. They also went outside of the American League West Division. Any coincidence that you're setting those guys up for success, but also so that you don't have to face them 19 times a year?
I will say the division thing is actually coincidence. Like we talked in division, the Mariners, Angels, and Rangers. Actually, we talked with all of them. The sort of common thread of the competitive teams is that those are the teams that are motivated enough to give up what it takes to get those players. I mean, if you're the Blue Jays or if you're the Braves and you're looking to compete for the World Series this year, you're going to have a little more push to give up what we're asking for, frankly. And that was the case in those deals and pretty much everything we did.
Specifically regarding Matt Chapman, because today we're going to see the Blue Jays and Chappie face the Oakland A's. What was his process like? What was saying goodbye like? You talked about Olson maybe calling him into the office. Is it you're the first one to tell Matt Chapman when it actually happened?
Yeah, I mean, that one was strange because it kind of broke early in the morning. I don't know if you remember the process, but somehow someone on Toronto radio had it, and I woke up to a call at 4:30 a.m. Arizona time from the Toronto GM apologizing, saying it had leaked from their end, and he knew I didn't want Matt to find out on Twitter that this had happened. So I sent Matt a text at 4:35 in the morning. Hey, call me when you get up. And like an hour and a half later, he's like, I think I know what this is about. So, Matt, though Matt hasn't been in the big leagues, a long time, he understands the game and the business. And, obviously it came out afterwards. We had talked about an extension with him at one point. So he'd sort of been through the cycle of those conversations, and all these guys, including, Ole and Bass and Sean too, like all these guys are pros and had nothing but great things to say on their way out the door. And, the thing about being here is there's always a chance we cross paths again. I mean, you see players come back. I mean, Jed's back for his 19th tour here, I think. So it's easy for me to say like, hey, this might not be the last time we cross paths. So that's always a little bit of a hopeful message on the way out.
Let's move on to the present. 4 wins, 3 losses after 7 games. Quite honestly, your team was extra innings away from being on a 5-game win streak right now. What are your initial, real early impressions of your team out of the gate so far?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is Kotz and how great Mark has been from day one, from the day he got the job to the day he was finally allowed to talk to players 2.5 months later. And then all through spring training. I mean, he set a great tone with his meeting. He's been incredibly communicative with everybody from players to staff. And I think you've seen it in the dugout this week. You've seen in his post-game conversations just how sort of energized and enthusiastic he is about this group and how much he wants them to grab this opportunity. So Kotz has been great. And really set the tone. And then, we have seen some of that fight in the players, some guys kind of grabbing onto opportunities. Obviously, Pache is the one who is most sort of out in front with the way he plays the game, which we knew when we traded for him. But you look at the way Sheldon Noisy swung the bat. Yep. You look at Murph sort of take that middle of the order role and run with it. And then everyone from Blackburn to Irvin to Jeffries, quality starts on the mound. And those are the things that are going to need to happen for this team to kind of, play the way we have.
Going back to Christian, I mean, you guys had high hopes. You knew what you were getting from Atlanta. I mean, you're obviously going to get a lot in return for Matt Olson. Is it safe to say, though, maybe he's at least on schedule or at least a little bit ahead of schedule? Because already, basically an everyday player, spot in the lineup, spot in the outfield, him specifically, is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, I think talk about opportunities being created with Ramon out for the first month of the season. Right. That was sort of handed to Christian as soon as he got here. Hey, we don't have a center fielder on paper right now. Like, go ahead, grab this job and take it. And, he's exactly what we expected. The defense is outstanding. The base running is great. The sort of style of play. And he's gotten his hits. I mean, he's hit the ball hard. Like, there's some legit exit velo there. And this has really been a great showcase for him. It's, we're excited that Ramon's going to get out there and play in a week or so and be back in a few weeks after that. But this is a great showcase for Christian.
Those 2 guys in the same outfield, I got to say, could be interesting / exciting. And also, Pache reminds me a little bit of Ramon when he debuted with the A's. Kind of had that first slide, that endearing moment to fans, that energy. Like he brings something extra than just, on-field contributions.
It's true. Yeah. And look, our fans have always responded to guys who play the game that way. You go back generations to, of A's players and guys who play hard, who care. Our fan base is really always connected to that.
Frankie Montas is in an interesting situation, and I know this gets, really deep and personal really fast, but he'd love to know what his next couple years look like. But you guys have a diligence to do in terms of if you are going to move him, when to do it. I know this can't be an easy situation behind the scenes. Are there things you can do to make it easier on him, to let him just go about his business? And Murph told us the other day, no worries. That's what he's doing right now. But I think you probably see it too. It's got to be hard for him to hear all this stuff at the same time as he goes out there and performs.
For sure. Yeah. And he's handled it great the first 2 times out, obviously. And I know, the report that came out a couple nights ago about the White Sox thing, like he reads the same stuff we do. I had an interesting talk with Frankie the day we traded Sean. Actually, he had gone over to the minor league complex to throw a simulated game just to make sure he got his pitch count up. And he came back and I said, hey, how you feeling? Everything's good. You got your pitches in. And I said, and at that point I think it was a Sunday afternoon. I said, hey, you're going to be here on Friday to pitch opening day for us. and you sort of saw his eyes light up and his shoulders sort of relax. And I was like,
Yeah.
I noticed physically how that affected him. So he's somebody between myself and Mark and Dan Feinstein, we try and talk to Frankie, and he does, it's totally understandable that someone like that, responds to knowing, where things stand. So we try and communicate as much as we possibly can, and it's not going to stop MLB trade rumors from doing what they do. But no, you're right. We see it, and for him to go out the other day in Tampa and throw that way was a huge lift for everybody.
I know it's just human nature, all this stuff, and I promise you, we at NBC will not try and contribute to any more noise than it has to be out there. Hey, last thing, I mean, no matter what the A's do on the field this year, we're all kind of following the stadium situation, Howard Terminal, and there is a lot of hope that by the end of this actual baseball season, there could be some binding votes, there could be some official things that let you know, all right, it's pretty much good to go with a shovel in the ground eventually. If a stadium could be secured in the course of this baseball season, does any of that at least start a different mindset process for you in the front office, the baseball operations side? Does any of it start to change, or are you still waiting for actual shovel in actual dirt?
Man, we've said for so long that like shovel and dirt is what changes our sort of standard operating. But we are, like you said, coming up on some really like important binding decisions, and Dave has worked so hard on all this now for 5 years, and I think we're at the point where by the end of the year we'd love to have some of that stuff sort of concretely decided, and yeah, I think if you told me by the end of 2022 calendar year that we had binding deals and had direction, yeah, we'd start the planning. We maybe don't wait for the shovels in the ground, but there's a long way to go. I know there's some meetings coming up. There's the early June vote that's critical. We're keeping our eye on that, but at the same time, focus on what's going on in the field.
David, really appreciate your time, your honesty, talking about all these detailed things. And if you see me burning leaning later this season, it's to celebrate hopefully what's good happening with the A's and the 10-year anniversary of, maybe magic all over again. So let's hope for it.
I appreciate it, Brody. I know you and Stu are locked in. We watch you guys in the studio. Appreciate everybody following along, and hopefully we keep playing good baseball. I know Kotz is going to fight as much as he can, and we'll keep watching.